joining the Mid-Atlantic Teaching Artist Virtual Retreat. My name is Casey Polchinski, and I work at the Virginia Commission for the Arts. The session will be recorded and later shared, so please turn off your video if you do not want to be recorded. Today's workshop is called Designing a Learning Story, Connecting Your Work to the Education Sector, Part 1, Mapping Your Work. And this session will be led by Rob McAdams, and he'll be joined by his cohort and colleague in this project, Dr. Lisa Donovan. Rob is based in Richmond, Virginia, and is the Director of Partners in the Arts at the University of Richmond, the School of Professional and Continuing Studies. I had the pleasure of introducing Rob and Dr. Lisa Donovan a few years ago, and Rob's gonna be sharing the first part of the fruit of their labor of their work together. I'm now going to turn things over to our producer, Susan Zoll, for a brief review of some technical housekeeping items.
Great, thank you, Casey. On the next slide, I want to show you how you can pin the interpreter view. So if you want to see the sign language interpreter, look for the name interpreter-Jenny in your videos, and then you can point to the top right corner of her video, and you should get those 3 dots and click on that for a drop down where you can then pin the video. If you prefer, you can click on the top right of your screen for gallery view, or click again to get just the active view where you'll just see the active speaker. If for some reason you get bumped out, know that using the same link to come back in usually fixes the issue. It is being recorded, as Casey mentioned, so no need to worry about missing something. You just get back in. You can jot my cell number down in case you do get disconnected and can't get back in. I'm going to send that out in chat as well. If you point your cursor at the bottom of your screen, your controls should pop out. This is a little blurry, but on the far right, you should see chat. If you click on that, you can pop it out. If you want to give me a quick hello so I know that you found that chat. Then if you could also pop out your participants, I'm going to show you 2 different things. Hello, everyone. I see them coming in. Thank you. So once you click on participants and pop that panel out, on the next slide, I want to show you, next 2 slides, I'm going to show you a couple things. One is that if you want to change your name, you can hover your cursor over your name, click on more and choose rename. And you can rename yourself, add your pronouns if you like. At the bottom of that panel, there are some icons where you can raise your hand or give a green check at the bottom of the participant list. So any questions, feel free to chat me about that. Otherwise, I want to pass it back to Casey. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Susan. Please welcome Rob McAdams and Dr. Lisa Donovan. Let's begin.
Good afternoon. Thanks, everybody. It's great to see you all, or your name, or however that works. I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and excited to be here. As Casey said, she actually introduced Lisa and I a few years ago at one of the Artworks conferences that the VCA puts on, and it's probably been four years, and we've been nonstop ever since. So I'm real appreciative of that partnership, and a lot of this work we've developed together and side by side, and it's a great thing to do. So I'm real excited. Looks like it's been a great conference so far. I was just real appreciative to see all the expertise and be in a world of teaching artists. My background is in fine arts, and I started working in education probably in 2003. So it's nice to be amongst people that speak the same language and feel the same things. So our goals today in this workshop, we're going to talk about mapping your work. So the first part is where you fit in this educational sector ecosystem, and then thinking specifically about your own work. Our program, the program that I direct, we do arts integration. And so we've had a summer institute and coursework that's been going on for 26 years now. So in March, like everybody else, we had to pivot, and instead of canceling everything, we decided to go ahead and let's try to do this online. So we had the tail end of a course that Lisa was helping us with that we did 2 sessions in May, and then the whole month of July, we developed a framework and a way of asking our teaching artists and other experts to engage. So that's really the process I'm going to share with you guys today. Let me get my. So I think the first, I'm just going to kind of shout out some of my big truths, essential element kind of things that drive me and really fund my approach to these works. And one is that recognizing that there's fields of knowledge, and every field has a specific language, history, technical and craft skill. And so even like the garbage men, like I couldn't go and jump on a garbage truck and know all the best practices and the tips and tricks. And if the driver's yelling to do something, you know, that would be a learning process. So all of the fine arts are a field, education is a field, art education, biology, all those things. So I've always been fascinated by the expertise of others. And when I was working on my MFA, my terminal project wound up being a collaboration. I think I had 35 different collaborators and all types of artists, scientists, designers, musicians, media art class. And so that's just a kind of a personal fascination of mine has been, and I guess my practice as a maker has always been, here's my idea, here's what I want to convey, what is the best way to convey it? And if I don't have those skills, who do I have to pitch and trick or bribe to work with me and get something done? So in this work we've been doing with Partners in the Arts, and this actually started, I was the Richmond Director for Young Audiences of Virginia, and their really great Arts for Learning program. So I know there's some Arts for Learning folks around. I was trying to find a way to communicate how we were integrating the arts in ways that it doesn't replace the art teacher. You know, a teaching artist, their jobs don't go away. If we train an English teacher how to do slam poetry, that's not putting slam poets out of business. So I came up with this 4-tiered framework that consists of the classroom teacher as our starting point, because we know that we all learn best through the arts. So we start with a classroom teacher, then the arts teacher in the building. And when I talk about arts, I mean performing, visual, and literary. So any medium or format that you want to put in. And then the next, after the classroom teacher, then they can go and work with their arts or music teacher, then community experts. And community experts is a massive bucket, and that's where I would put most teaching artists, and then biologists, but also higher ed, so university students and faculty. There's just a lot of buried levels of expertise within that community bucket. And then community institutions. So there I would put, our Virginia Museum of Fine Arts or the Science Museum of Virginia. So the large scale institutions and organizations, the Kennedy Center that do work in the community, but kind of at that next level. And then this graphic that I have up is trying to help visualize that. I don't know if anybody's seen that, the Will Ferrell movie, Stranger Than Fiction. The opening of that, MK12 design did this just incredible floating graphic work. And I love that. So we have all these images. So the top image, you can see that's Lisa there, and she's running a session on Tableau and using a Norman Rockwell painting. So these teachers are mixed together with teaching artists. And I just wanted to be able to share that in a snapshot. So the bottom image, so this was kind of my sketch that I turned into a designer saying, if we have video, this is what I want. So, it's pointing to Lisa Donovan, an author of a book, and she's in Massachusetts, and the site is the Visual Arts Center of Richmond. And there's a teaching artist, there's a slam poet, there's a K-5 music teacher, and there's an 8th grade history teacher. And then I put in some of the elements. Strong tableau have a variety of levels, low, medium, high. So this idea of communicating all these concepts in different ways is what I wanted to show in that. So kind of diving in a little bit deeper with this framework, and this is how I was showing kind of the who, what, where, why, or the who, what, and where learning would happen and engaging with artists and these different skills would be. So the classroom teacher we're asking them to use the basics of all art forms. So they need to know the elements of visual arts and design and theater and dance and visual arts, so line, form, shape, color. So when we're training them, we're asking them to be responsible for all that. The resource teachers, that's where you start to get into standards-based and art training. And you'll notice there I use capital A and small a art to kind of distinguish between the field of art and then the practices that we use, like the sensory input. And I'll get a little bit deeper into that later, but that's why that shows up, small a, capital A. And then the next step is the visiting experts artists. So they're bringing, you know, a university or a professional level of skills, training, exposure. And then again, it's the institutions. And I haven't updated this slide since the pandemic, but it used to be where, so in school and somebody's studio or on site or in the community. So I need to update that. And, you know, we really see this, the pandemic and the COVID, the opportunity where a lot of schools are working virtually. I see it as an opportunity for the work that we do, where we know that we learn best in the world around us, and what are the real world applications of any content that a teacher is trying to convey to a student. So how can we take this opportunity to do that? And then deeper learning, I'm sure you guys are seeing this. It's a big thing in the education sector. And then evolving objectives. So if you've looked at the Kennedy Center definition of arts integration, they talk about there's all evolving objectives and a non-arts and an arts standard. So my approach is the way we get deeper learning and deeper objectives is by engaging deeper levels of expertise. So that's really our core framework for that. Why does this work? I think the arts processes align to like a foundational learning process. So this idea that we see something, I feel like everything starts with an observation. You're walking around, you see something, you're curious about it, you have a question about it, then you develop an idea and a hypothesis, and you set up an experiment. So maybe the experiments, I'm gonna paint using only blue. And then I'm gonna explore all my paintings, the figures, whatever I'm painting, I'm only gonna use the color blue and see what I can do within that. I think in that experimenting process is where we develop our technical and craft skills. We practice failure, or I love using iteration instead of failure, because that's what we're doing. We're just trying over and over, and then reflect, share, feedback, and then refine and repeat. So I think the first part, we start with observing and capturing. So these creative practices, when we talk about those, we share them as just seeing, listening, and moving through space. So when you're in the world, how are you taking things in visually? How are you hearing and listening? And then how do you move and feel and understand space with our other senses? And that's what artists are trained to do. We're, you're walking down the street and you see, there's a sign that's got a yellow-green color in the text, and then somebody walks in front of that sign with the same color shorts. So a lot of people might not notice that, but as a visual artist, you're attuned to those things and you're looking for those types of relationships. And then the next step is, so observing and capturing. Capturing is, do you carry a sketchbook? Do you draw and put things down? And I've got those laid out in this slide under processes for all. So these are the small arts pieces that we're born with, and as a species we're designed to see and to make marks and communicate visually. We have that perfect metronome. We all have a heartbeat, so we got that basis of music and that drum beat always going. We can make sounds with our voice. We can communicate with our hands and our bodies. So all those things we do naturally, and I guess a shout out to Ken Robinson. So that was a big loss recently, but he was talking about how education is killing this creativity, and we're being taught that we can't draw. So in that middle line, so we talk about drawing versus rendering. So anybody can draw, and Linda Berry does a great job of making drawing accessible to everybody. But really that distinction between, we're not worried about representational drawing and sitting down and spending 10,000 hours to be able to render a bowl of fruit. We're talking about seeing something, getting an image down, getting your idea down, and being able to communicate that visually. And I was looking for a similar thing in drama, and I can't remember the woman's name, but she was talking about the difference between drama versus theater, where drama is a process and theater is the outcome, where you're making a play. And so I liked the way she had expressed that. So then that goes into the product step, where we're asking, in that learning process, we're asking students to create, make, and share. And they're making a product. So they're putting a play together. They're using their drawing skills to make a painting, or they're collecting sounds. So they're recording sounds, and then they're using that to create music or beats or songs. Is everybody okay so far? I can't see the chat, so we've got Lisa and Casey and some folks monitoring that. If it's blowing up, please share.
Nope, we're good.
I guess the sense of smell is the most powerful, one of the most powerful memory triggers, I believe. So I'm gonna ask, is everybody smelling what I'm stepping in as far as what I'm sharing right now? Yes, thumbs up, good. All right. So thinking back to Mike O'Brien shared kind of the futurist view, and how all these skills and things that we do as artists are needed in every sector. So the business sector, and leadership, and teaching and learning in that sector, and the soft skills that attorneys use. All these things are relevant, but I really want to focus on how. So again, back to you guys and your expertise, what we need to do is name that expertise. So what I want to do, and I don't know if one of the other presenters was talking about doing the name game, and we've been experimenting a lot throughout the summer with using breakout rooms and all these different mechanisms to do kind of our classic. We've done blind contour, we did body percussion. So I want to try the name game, and the way I want to try it is, we're going to do it, and then Lisa, myself, and Casey will model, and you guys will respond back. So if everybody can put on gallery view, and if you're okay with being seen and you do have video, it'd be great. I think this will be a great visual. So the name game is an improv game from the theater world, and you just come up with a gesture, movement, or action, and it kind of reflects where you are today. And then what you would do is you would say your name and perform that to the rest of the group, and then the rest of the group repeats back your name and the action or the gesture simultaneously. And we use this a lot. Well, we use this in almost every single course we do on the first day, because we want to establish a learning community based on equity, trust, and candor. So what we're going to do now is, I'll go and model it, and then Lisa will go and Casey will go. So,
Rob, before
yeah.
you go forward, I think if you stop screen sharing, we'll be able to see the full gallery view. Right now, we only see what's on the side.
Does that do it?
That does it. And also just to note that there's a couple folks that are just listening in on iPhone. So if you can just describe what you're doing, that would be helpful.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to tell, here's for the iPhone folks. I'm going to describe what I'm going to do because I just thought of it. Because we have a screen, I'm going to put my hands close to the screen together. So that would be all you see. And then I'm going to open my hands and thrust my head forward at the same time and yell my name because I'm kind of excited and that's the kind of motion I want to do. So everybody else's job is to repeat that back. So I'm going to do the motion and then just there'll be a lot of delays. So after I do it, if you just count a beat and then you repeat my gesture back. Don't do the sound because everybody's on mute. Just do the action. All right, you ready? Here we go. Rob. Lisa, it's your turn.
All right, I like the way that you're working with the Zoom camera. So I'm going to do this a similar thing. I'm going to take the first letter of my name, L, and I'm going to make a funky spiral in and out close and far from the video. Lisa. All right.
And I'm kind of trying to come out of my inner shell from the summertime. So I'm going to cover my hands above my head and then just open one at a time and say, Casey.
Yay, good job, everybody. Thanks for indulging. So another way to do that would obviously, you go in the breakout room and you put 3 or 4 people in a group and they go around and do that. Let me go back. And if you want to throw in the chat, I think the chats are kept as well. So when I'm doing training, what we do is, this is where we talk about why that works and why that's important. I lost my screen share. So, and I'm sure there's a bunch of theater folks. So if you guys could jump in, I always share it as when you're putting on a play, you have 140 hours to get directors, actors, lighting, sound, all these people together as a unit to put on a production. So how do you build that community based on equity, trust, and candor so that everybody can share their ideas, everybody can take feedback and respond to feedback and get things done. And I think those improv tools are just great to do that. So one of the things that I'm trying to get my share screens together. One of the tools that we're going to share is an online organizer. So I did that just real quickly for the name game. So kind of the read and watch, the introduction, the background. I've got this. We're going to build this learning community. We have 104 hours to curtain. It's day 1, so I'm not going to introduce anything to them before. So the processes and the prompts, we're gonna do what we just did, and these are the opportunities for choice, observation, and communication. So if you think about observation, everybody's seen and they're looking closely and they're listening to how the voice is said. So when we do this, there's always, you don't have to give any of those directions. You just say what I said. They're going to do a gesture and you repeat it back. But everybody always mimics the voice perfectly. So if the pitch goes up and down, if they draw it out. So this is the way I always use that as kind of the proof that we're made to see and listen and understand movement. And then the next column, we break it down a little bit further, like what are the tools to use, and then what are the connections. So if we want inclusion or shared experiences, if we want to experience failure, so not in unison. So I wasn't able to do that here, but when you're doing it in a circle and there's always one person that doesn't respond in unison, they either go too early or they go late. So I call them out and give them an F right away, and model that failure and that process of what does it feel like, and it helps everybody kind of relieve some tension. One of the most important parts, I think, is the comfort. So not a lot of people are comfortable using theater and putting themselves out there and taking that risk. Can you guys see my slides again?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about that. So we'll share this. So this is that organizer, and it's really naming your expertise. And I think, again, this goes back to Mike O'Brien's piece of what artists do. And this is the big connector we find with education, is this naming your process and naming your expertise. So the things that you do intuitively all the time, it's drilling down and deciding what those are. So then the next step, so does anybody have any questions? Let's pause there. So the elements are key. So this third column in the documents I'll share at the end of this, and then leading into Lisa's workshop, the essential elements is where you're naming line, form, shape, color, body, energy, space, time. And that's how a science teacher, a 6th grade science teacher, can objectively assess an art project. So if they're looking at a comic, those are the tools that they're using. And Lisa's going to go a lot deeper into this. But this idea of, I see that you used a curved line there. Tell me about that choice. Or in listening to the song that you created about the states of matter, it sounds like the tempo for the solid is very fast. But what does your song for the gas sound like? Because if you know a solid molecule moves slower than a gas molecule, then wouldn't the tempo be faster for a gas than for a solid? So that's where that shows up. The next step is, how do we then take all this and design workshops to do all these different things? So the read and watch is the background. Where, is there research? Can they watch a video on YouTube or then an article they need to read? And then observe and capture is a process where you're giving them prompts and a sketchbook to go out in the community and jot things down, or to walk a normal path they do in their neighborhood and record sounds with their phone or a device. And then the third step is making something. So putting a project together that's building and scaffolding on what you are observing and capturing, and then sharing that. So how do you share that work? Is it going to be, are we going to make a comic? Are we making a song? Are we doing dance phrases? And then the reflect and the feedback. So what we're asking teaching artists to do is to think about those 4 buckets, and you're designing practices that meet those needs. Back in, 15 years ago, the idea of a flipped classroom was out, where students were doing a lot of kind of that precursor learning and practicing outside of the classroom, then coming into the classroom for more detailed discussion and really specific feedback. So now we have the whole virtual piece. So how do you provide all of this to people in these different ways? So what can the kids get? And I saw a tweet the other day that said, we shouldn't be using this asynchronous, synchronous language. So call it on demand or watch live. So how do we spread out this learning and these activities so that students can do it on their own time, they can do it in their community, they can do it with the teachers, or they can do it with their peers in their class. So it's kind of folding those 2 pieces together. So Susan, could you share that organizer template? So
Sure.
what's being shared in the chat now is, and this framework and this overview that we give to any experts or teaching artists that we're working with, and we're asking them to design courses for us. So you'll see there's this first table is the framework of elements. The second is the workshop organizer chart, which I like to call the teaching artist workshop organizer chart, or TWalk, like Ewok. But you'll see here, we want you to think in those terms, and it's as applicable to an old school, whatever the normal used to be, working in a classroom or a studio with students, as it is working online. So I think the most important piece is designing wonder. What are the real world applications and problems? And then I put find a welder, and that's the get other expertise that you don't have. So I think it's Donald Judd had the perfect metal boxes back in the 60s. So you think about, am I going to spend years and years and years learning how to weld a perfect steel box if that's what I want for this one project? Or do I find somebody that's been welding for 12 years to build that? So that's the find the expert part of that process. And then the engage and interact is what you want students to do, both with their community and all the learning opportunities in the world around them. So just walking through this framework, the other piece then is that second column is, what are you going to create, and what is that platform? So where does that show up? So, for our intro, we're going to have them watch, Sir Ken Robinson's Creativity and Education, the RSA whiteboard video. And then we're going to give them prompts to go out in their community and, look down and sketch everything around your feet, or, find 10 things that fit in your hand and sketch those, or find, parallelograms in buildings downtown. So those are the prompts under observe and capture. And then the make, create, and share again is what is the end product? And then how do you make? So are you going to create an online tutorial? Are you going to do an open studio through Zoom to show processes? So really thinking about how you would do all those different, getting them the skills and the processes, and then where and how they're going to submit work and post it and share it for group feedback. So does everybody have that framework document? I would love if we could just take 5 minutes. So by the time I'm done talking till 3:10, go ahead on that workshop organizer chart, whatever your art form is, just jot down, and I'm more focused on the second and third columns. So what is your process in the basic creative skills? So seeing, listening, or moving. How do you use, what do you use in your art form to take in observations? And then the third column, the process product. What are the essential elements? So thinking about one project or an idea that you would work on, just real quickly for 5 minutes, fill in those two columns.
Rob, you have a couple of questions in the chat box.
I see Seth's question. I would use your field vocabulary. So the whole, like, what we're doing is we're translating, and it's really naming, it's your vocabulary from your field. And then when you distill it down to those core elements, and we're asking teachers to do the same thing with their learning standards. So they're drilling down, you know, say a solar system piece where, you know, the student needs to understand revolution or rotation or translation, which if you drill down dance or movement elements, rotation and revolution show up there. So this is where, whatever your field, like what's your art form?
I'm in theater. I'm just confused about this. I've always just created theater, and having to quantify it in this fashion is so hard for me to do.
Yeah, and that's, so we hear the exact same thing from teachers with their standards, like, but really, like, this is the work, and we talk about it all the time of, and this is the hard part. And, you know, and it's not efficient, but it's a process. And when you start to think about, and that's, you know, again, back to the improv games, like, what is really at a core level, what is happening between people? And, you know, I can't stand when people use those, like, refer to those as icebreakers, because so much is going on. And, you know, so again, back to the name game and the circle, you know, it's inclusive. So everybody has an equal voice because they're in a circle. 35% of those people are about to vomit because they do not want to create, they don't want to put themselves out there in that way. So that's analogous to the classroom, where you have kids that aren't strong readers, you know, being handed a worksheet and they're struggling. So how do we engage them in different ways? I mean, Tableau, and Lisa's background is in theater, and like, all those things are important. So variety, and, you know, a good Tableau, you have high, middle, low, and you're thinking about front of stage, foreground, background, all that stuff translates. So, I mean, it may even be, it'll feel remedial, but, you know, starting with those basic elements in theater, because then in education, that's what translates, and those are where objective choices can be made. So when I look at the Tableau that you've designed, communicating, you know, a story that we're reading, and I don't see different levels, you know, how do you show in Tableau who the main character is? So in theater, you would put that person up front, or, you know, spotlight them in some way, or all the other characters are below that person. And then that's the bridge. So that was kind of a monologue there. I don't know if that was helpful at all, but.
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
What did everybody else, how did that process go for everybody else? Or any highlights, or? And the carnival dance, the real life experience, yes. I mean, that's the impetus to learn. You know, we see something, that's another, I have all these things like art makes learning fun. I cannot, no, the act of learning itself is fun. Watch any child pre-language, they're moving, they're dancing, they're singing, and they're drawing. By the age of 3, they're fluent in those 3 languages, and they're learning more proportionally than we will ever learn. And that's what feels good. That's the fun part. Yes, the arts are a great tool to do it, but all right. So I'm gonna take that, and Susan, if you could share the PDF. So I know this is overwhelming and a lot, and, you know, we've created a arts integrated learning certificate that we're running teachers through. We train the teachers. We have a foundations course, a telling the story of learning assessment course, and then a making the connections course, which we're giving them the skills in integrated teaching. And then the second course, we train teaching artists and teachers side by side. So they're learning together, and they go through this process together. So you're using your vocabulary, the teacher's using their vocabulary. And that was the image at the beginning. That was the course that Lisa was in. And that is one of the most powerful things we've stumbled on. And I feel like we can do more and more and more of that. And then the last one is making the connection. So how do you see something going on in your community and connect your learning to it? So in that second course, we asked them to use these tools and put together a workshop So what the PDF that was just shared with you is one of our teaching artists, Aijung Kim. So she's a visual artist, a printmaker. She loves text and visuals together. We probably first used her for a workshop 6 or 7 years ago, and she's just been with us ever since. She did the first session of the Telling the Story of Learning course, and she quit. We had asked the teaching artist to do a brief walkthrough, and she's really thorough and deep and detailed, and really couldn't wrap her head around what she was going to do. And Lisa had some ideas, and she was just felt overwhelmed. And I had a couple different conversations with her and just asked her to come and finish it off. And she's done just amazing work for us now. And you can see the 9-page PDF that we've shared is really exactly what we're looking for. So on this last slide, what I did is, the way her workshop was organized is she created an online tutorial so folks can watch that on demand asynchronously. We asked her to do a kickoff session before that, and in that session as a group we did blind contour, kind of breaking down some of the reluctance to draw, so dealing with those concepts. And then she did how to observe with your pencil and look at perspective and proportion and scale. So that was an hour kickoff for them to then go out and watch the tutorial, which the first 17 minutes she talks about her work and her practice, and we put the link in. It's under the duration, the hour to watch the video. So you guys are welcome to jump on there and check that out. And then we had all the participants put their work that they made from the tutorial we ran this course through Blackboard, so they put that into discussion board. We've actually also used Google Slides, which we stole that from Lisa and her work in Massachusetts, where the students put their work on a Google slide. So then you have one slideshow that has everybody's work in it. And then we have a feedback session where they're having more time with the expert, where they're sharing their work. And as you guys know, working with anybody, that's one of the most important pieces, is allowing that voice and to talk about their work. And then the in the world components. So she had them do 3 activities kind of on their own, and then she gave, let's see, page 7, the sketchbook prompts. There she had people go out in the community and they had to do 4 or 5 of those activities. And then the very last page, so then she gives reflection questions. But the very last page is the evidence chart, which Lisa's going to go into in more depth. And that was a chart that she came up with she's got a book coming out in October on assessment, which is just, it's a really powerful tool, and I think is really the key to a lot of this work. And what we did is we added that elements column to the evidence chart, so that it makes it more direct for teachers and artists working together to see that. So I'm blown away at the work. The last thing on this slide in the lower right hand corner you can see is that's where we offered an opportunity for feedback in discussion boards, where but that can happen in any platform. Somebody could post something on Instagram. We used Facebook over the summer, where teachers would post slam poems into a closed Facebook group and provide feedback that way. It's been an amazing thing to see this summer. Just the work that teachers do. So you can, I don't know if you noticed the dates, they would meet on a Wednesday, be introduced to the artist and the project, and then by Sunday they would create and post their work, and then Monday we would have a feedback session. And we had cohorts, we had 2 cohorts, so about 60 teachers total over the summer with all the crazy stuff going on. And you can see like some of the work they did. You know, I love the dog. I'm definitely not stuck in my bandana, said the 3-legged dog. And the house, you know, just combining visuals and text. Here's my contact. You can email our program or McAdams@richmond.edu. I'd like to take the rest of the time just if there's any questions.
I just want to jump in. We're going to get a link to share. We posted the PowerPoint as a file. That's not working for everybody, so I'm going to go grab a Google link and I will pop it into the box in just a moment. Rob, there's also a question about are iJung's videos available for viewing?
Yeah, so the tutorial that she created is on that PDF. If you have that open, if you could just double check that link. It's on the PDF itself.
Okay, we'll check on that.
I mean, I'll grab that and post that in the.
You know, as people are thinking about what questions you might have, just one reflection I would offer is these tools that Rob is providing and in the session after this, they're really thinking frames. So as artists going into school settings, you know the deep value and rigor of your work. But one of the things that you really need to think about is how are you communicating that? And how are you communicating it across disciplines so that if someone isn't immersed in the arts, that they get what you're bringing. So it's challenging work. And Rob's example of iJung, you know, being in a situation, she's this amazing visual artist, working with educators. She was completely overwhelmed by the educational language, the use of standards, right? She leaves, she decides to come back with our encouragement. And if you just open the piece that she put together, that is over months of coming back. What are my key practices? How am I introducing the work? How am I scaffolding it? So it's a step-by-step progression. And at the end of the day, it has this process of distilling what she does and pulling out these key ideas has deepened her work, and it's allowed her to communicate to people in educational settings the value of it. So it's, you know, I saw a comment in the chat box. It's like, you know, where do I start with the columns? Start anywhere. Look at the example of iJung. Come to the next session. We'll do a little bit more practical kind of on the ground writing. But the idea here is what Rob is doing is asking artists to sort of distill practice in concrete terms and to think through these different lenses, which will actually help in communicating.
Ashley, the asynchronous synchronous was a kind of a joke tweet. So I would say half of the things I say are kind of jokey, but I liked that language. So that's why I say that. Sarah, are you able to get links?
I'm working on it right now.
Okay. I'm kind of going back. If you have a question, just shout it out. I think this is the answer. Arts is the answer, period. I don't call it the arts. Gets in a lot of trouble. Throws up a lot of barriers, but.
Okay, there's the link. See if that works.
And lucky you guys, that's 2 for the price of 1. At least this link follows right up.
Oh, that's right.
Well, are you ready to wrap it up then, Rob?
I think so.
Okay, so thank you all so much for attending today's Mid-Atlantic Teaching Artists Virtual Retreat. Recordings of all of the workshops will be available on NASA's YouTube channel within the week. Look to the chat to see the link for our Facebook group, and please join us there to offer your reflections on today's presentation. Also, watch your email inbox for a brief survey every Friday of the retreat to let us know what you think. Please take a moment now to complete the exit survey of 3 simple questions that are going to pop up on your screen. I really want to thank Rob. Rob, thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure for you to share the beginning of this work of mapping the learning stories. We hope that you will join us for the next session, part 2 of designing a learning story, connecting your work to the education sector, mapping your work with Dr. Lisa Donovan, and that will start at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Thank you all and goodbye, and we'll hopefully see you in the next session.